Shelley Duvall passed away this week at the age of 75. She was an extraordinary talent who appeared in so many iconic films and TV shows. Her work has definitely had an impact on me throughout the years, and so this is my tribute to a most wonderful actress. Hi, it's Brian. Welcome to the awards contender, and these are the 10 greatest Shelley Duvall performances. Let's start with number 10, Fairy Tale Theater.
Hello. I'm Shelley Duvall.
So there was a year when I was young, this would have been the late 1980s or early 1990s, when my mom wanted to know what I wanted for Christmas. And my response was, I want every episode of Fairy Tale Theater. Like, I want to see it all. And I'll never forget, under the Christmas tree that year, there was just one VHS of Fairy Tale Theater, and it was Jack and the Beanstalk. To be honest, I was a little disappointed that it was just one episode of the show and not the entire series, but boy, did I wear out that VHS tape of Jack and the Beanstalk over and over again. I probably watched it 100 times, and I did eventually catch up with the entire series. This was, in every way, Shelley Duvall's baby. She wanted this show to happen. She made it happen. She, of course, appears at the beginning of every episode with, "Hello, I'm Shelley Duvall," but she also appears as an actress in 3 of the episodes. I really love her performance as Rapunzel. I know I mostly focus on movies on this channel, but when it comes to Shelley Duvall, I had to mention the great Fairy Tale Theater. Number 9, McCabe and Mrs Miller. So a name you're going to hear a lot in this video is Robert Altman. Like, the phenomenal director Robert Altman really made a career for Shelley Duvall. He discovered her, he put her in countless films between the early 1970s and early 1980s. Some of the roles are very small, some of them are much bigger. One of her effective but small roles in an Altman film is in McCabe and Mrs Miller from 1971, starring Warren Beatty and Julie Christie. Duvall plays a mail-order bride who turns into a sex worker after the death of her husband. She is very good in her small number of scenes, feels very appropriate and authentic to the period. McCabe and Mrs Miller is a captivating, fascinating Western I encourage you to check out if you've never seen it. Number 8, Rox Sand. Steve Martin had quite the run of films in the 1980s. I mean, All of Me, Little Shop of Horrors, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, Parenthood, the list goes on and on. But one of his very best films from that decade is 1987's Rox Sand, which he stars in and wrote the screenplay for, and Shelley Duvall has a wonderful supporting turn in that as Martin's friend. Her character doesn't have a lot at stake in the overall narrative, but she has a nice chemistry with Martin, and she is a welcome addition to that ensemble cast. Number 7, Frank and Weenie.
Chicken's just great, Ma. Excuse me.
Hi. Victor?
Yeah.
He seems to be taking it fairly well.
I will never forget the obsession my childhood friend Thomas had for Tim Burton films. Like, he was going nuts for Batman and Beetlejuice and Edward Scissorhands, and I remember him coming over one day with a VHS copy of Frankenweenie. I was like, what is that? And he said, it's an early movie by Tim Burton, we gotta watch it. And it's short and sweet and so very charming. I enjoy the entire cast, and I especially love the performances of the parents, Daniel Stern as the father and Shelley Duvall as the mother. They have a very enjoyable back and forth, and I love their relationships with their son. Shelley Duvall doesn't have a lot to do in that movie, but she's very good nonetheless. Number 6, Annie Hall.
He's God. I mean, this man is God. He's got millions of followers who would crawl all the way across the world just to touch the hem of his garment.
I am a huge fan of Annie Hall. I don't know about you. It's definitely one of my top 3 favorite Woody Allen movies. Such a great screenplay, that iconic Oscar-winning performance by Diane Keaton in the title role. Shelley Duvall has a handful of very funny moments after Alvy and Annie have split up. Alvy has a couple new girlfriends that he doesn't really connect to the way he connected to Annie. One of those eccentric girlfriends is played by Duvall, and she has a lot of fun with this brief, entertaining role. Number 5, Brewster McLoud.
He's only a secretary. Anyway, the whole deal made me so mad. I broke every one of his cider bottles, especially the one he dedicated to me.
Alright, so now we get to the 5 essentials. These, for me, are the 5 must-see Shelley Duvall performances. Like, if you haven't seen these 5 movies, and you want to pay tribute to Duvall, start with these. You can begin with her 1970 film debut, Robert Altman's Brewster McLoud. It's kind of an interesting story. Shelley Duvall was not pursuing acting. She wasn't in Los Angeles, like booking commercials and TV shows or anything like that. She was living in Texas, and she bumps into Robert Altman at a party while he's on location shooting Brewster McLoud, and he was so taken by her appearance and her personality that he said, I need to cast this person in my new movie. And he does, and she kind of reluctantly agrees to be in it. Again, she wasn't pursuing acting, but she liked him, and she thought, well, I'll give this a try. Why not? It'll be fun. This is why when you look at Shelley Duvall's filmography of the 1970s, it's almost exclusively Robert Altman movies. Like, he was the main director she worked with for a long while. Their collaboration began with Brewster McLoud, and she is hilarious and charming as hell in this movie. She's so young and quirky as this tour guide who takes the virginity of the main character, played by Bud Cort. It doesn't feel like a film debut performance. It feels like she's been acting for years. Like, she's so confident in this first movie of hers. The film itself is a little hit and miss. The ending is pretty wild. But if nothing else, watch it for the Duvall performance. She is amazing in it. Number 4, Thieves Like Us.
You can't go after him.
What are you doing? Maddie, let go. Who are all those men out there? Let go, Maddie!
So with Robert Altman, Shelley Duvall makes Brewster McLoud in 1970, and then she appears in McCabe Mrs Miller in 1971. Her third collaboration with Altman, Thieves Like Us, really brought Duvall to another level. It's still a supporting role, but it's a much meatier part than she'd had before. She gets to show off her dramatic chops in a Depression-era gangster movie where she plays a woman who falls in love with a small-time bank robber played by Keith Carradine. They have a lovely chemistry together. Robert Altman allows Duvall in this movie to really stretch herself and try new things. She's not kooky, comedic relief like she was in Brewster McLoud. Here she is a full-fledged, three-dimensional character, and she does such a remarkable job in this movie that reportedly, at some point, Altman looked at her and said, I knew you were good, but I didn't know you were great. Number 3, Popeye.
Hey, I want to carry him for a walk.
Oh, leave him be there. It's Uncle Wimp's calling with a sweet pea.
Oh, yeah, Wimpy can take him, but I can't.
Oh my God, is this the most perfect casting in any movie ever made? It might be. Shelley Duvall as Olive Oyl in the Popeye adaptation from 1980. Now, this is not a perfect movie by any means. Popeye is very messy, it's very long, it can be lumbersome at times, but those exquisite performances carry you through. Robin Williams in his major feature film debut as the title character, and Duvall as Olive Oyl is a wonder to behold. I feel like Robert Altman probably wouldn't have made the movie if Shelley Duvall had not played that role. It really does feel like a comic strip character come to life. Nobody else could have played that part the way that Duvall does. In Popeye, which turned out to be her final collaboration with Altman, she is funny and charming and courageous and bold and a total delight. Number 2, The Shining.
It's amazing how fast you get used to such a big place. I tell you, when we first came up here, I thought it was kind of scary.
Now we come to the magnum opus, like the big one. 100%, the movie she will be most remembered for is Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. Some people have an issue with this movie, including Stephen King, who of course wrote the original novel. The Razzie Award voters at the very first ceremony nominated Shelley Duvall for Worst Actress of the Year, which is frickin' insane if you ask me. I have always loved The Shining. It's one of my favorite horror films, one of my favorite films of all time, and I love, with a capital L, that Shelley Duvall performance. I will never forget watching The Shining for the first time. It was at a 6th grade birthday party, and it was late at night, and I had heard about this movie. I had just started reading Stephen King books. I hadn't read The Shining yet, but I knew of it, and I had heard great things about the movie, and I just went nuts for this one. It became a Halloween staple in my household every year after 6th grade. I've seen it on the big screen 2 or 3 times. I just watched it again on Shudder a couple weeks ago and fell in love all over again. It is so engrossing from the first scene. Even though it is a slow burn, there's just something about that story and the cinematography, the pacing, the mood of it, and those performances by Jack Nicholson and Shelley Duvall. I have never understood what people don't like about the Duvall performance. I think she does a stellar job showing the arc of this character, going from having a happy husband, a happy child, to maniacal, unthinkable terror that is mostly being caused by her husband. Obviously, Stanley Kubrick put Shelley Duvall through the ringer on this movie. We'll never know exactly what went down. He probably overstepped. He clearly put Duvall through hell on that production for multiple months. Ultimately, at the end of the day, what a stellar bravura performance from Duvall in that movie. We are with her, we root for her every step of the way as she does everything in her power to protect her son. I think 1980's The Shining is one of the all-time great movies, and I think Shelley Duvall gives a spectacular performance. Alright, before I get to my number one choice, a few runners-up, I have to mention Nashville, one of Robert Altman's finest films from 1975. Lily Tomlin is amazing in it. She got her one and only Oscar nomination. And Shelley Duvall is also memorable in a tiny role. Time Bandits from Terry Gilliam is an abundance of riches. So many wonderful actors and performances in that fantasy film. Shelley Duvall has a lot of fun in that supernatural reality. I have to mention Mother Goose Rock and Rhyme. It might have been the Disney Channel at the beginning of the 1990s, but I really loved this one as a kid. It's probably really corny now, but who cares? Same goes for 1991 Suburban Commando, which was also a childhood favorite of mine. I mean, Hulk Hogan and Christopher Lloyd and Shelley Duvall. I wouldn't call this one a good movie, but it's fun to see Lloyd and Duvall as a married couple. And Jane Campion's The Portrait of a Lady from 1996. Now, sadly, after The Shining and Popeye, Shelley Duvall's career never takes flight. She's in a lot of projects over the next 20 years, but outside of her TV projects like Fairy Tale Theater, nothing really pops. She was never again given the opportunities I think she deserved, but she does give one more outstanding dramatic performance in The Portrait of a Lady starring Nicole Kidman. It's a brief role, almost a cameo, where she plays a countess, but in her select few minutes, Shelley Duvall showed that she was still on top of her game, and frankly had a lot more to offer in the movies if she'd been given the opportunities. And finally, that takes me to the number one choice, the greatest Shelley Duvall performance. Most people agree with this one. This is her signature performance in a movie. The performance that should have gotten her an Oscar nomination for Best Actress. My number one choice is Three Women.
At least told Doris or Alcera or somebody. Who took you there to go in and get my keys?
Tom?
Pinky, I had to call the police and everything. They're sitting in there right now waiting on me.
So, if you want to pay tribute to the late, great Shelley Duvall, and you haven't seen Robert Altman's Three Women, this is the movie to watch. Three Women, also starring Sissy Spacek, is an unusual, hypnotic film. It was inspired by a dream Robert Altman had, and he saw the movie in this dream. Fully formed, with the casting, with everything, he tried to capture the dream in the making of the movie. And what this dream brought to us in 1977 was Shelley Duvall's finest hour. She plays the character of Millie, who works at an old folks' home in California. She befriends and becomes roommates with the newest worker, played by Spacek. And it's just an extraordinary, impeccable tour de force performance by Duvall. There are moments of comedy, moments of tragedy. She gets to show everything she's made of in this movie. What you think you know about her in those opening scenes makes way for some big surprises as this narrative unfolds. Robert Altman gave the world a gift. He really did, by discovering Duvall and putting her in all of these movies. The number one Shelley Duvall present he gave us was easily Three Women. For her performance, Duvall won Best Actress at the Cannes Film Festival, and she received a BAFTA nomination. She didn't get an Oscar nomination, which is too bad. I think she was deserving of that one Oscar nod. Regardless, she is exquisite in this movie, and I implore you to check it out.
Thanks.
And that's all I have. Shelley Duvall, 1949 to 2024. You had a major impact on my life. I know you had impacts on so many other people's lives in film and TV. Thank you for everything you gave us, and we're really going to miss you.